Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode. Today I'm going to talk about is waiting for inspiration killing your writing career, and then we will look at the question. Now, today we'll be tackling that question: is waiting for inspiration killing your writing career? And by the end of this episode, you will understand why relying on inspiration can be detrimental and how to write consistently without it. Now, let me share a story with you. It's once said that Anthony Trollope, I don't know how to pronounce the name, wrote for 3 hours every morning before his day job, producing over 40 novels in his career. That's a lot. When you say prolific, that's a lot. But the whole idea of writing for inspiration and discipline, it's just different. With inspiration, writing is just one of those creative work that people wait for inspiration. There are others, but writing is just like it's there. They're like, oh, I'm not really inspired. When I'm inspired, I have to create stuff. Guess what? If you write something that you're not inspired to write, what will happen? If it's not so great, you don't publish it. If it's great, you publish it. But now you have a work which might end up being great. But if we are waiting for inspiration, you would not have written anything in the first place. And you would not have seen what that work would have amounted to. There's so many writers who started work, they don't really know where it will end up. And then at the end of the day, they're like, wow, I wrote something brilliant. I wrote something awesome, wonderful. Even me, I'm surprised. The whole idea of waiting for inspiration, I think it's because most of the times writing is something that we latch on as hobbies, as something that we do. It's not our full-time gig. It's not what we do. It's not our work. Because think of it this way: if you were an author and full-time author, and being an author was the business in which that's how you feed. That's what you do. You have to write every work, a new work, probably every month or every maybe 3 works every year. It's a different game entirely because right now, that's why I never really understood or could relate with Stephen King when he said that when I'm writing working on a book, I write for 2,000 words. I write 2,000 words every day for the next 19 days, and then I get the work done. I never really understood that. I was like, dude, how does that really work? Because when you become a professional writer, when writing, I'm not saying that you have to become you have to quit your day job or whatever, to write full time. No. What I'm saying is that the whole idea is because we're just writing, it's just between us and us. It's between you and you. It's not like something that you have to, a deadline. You have to meet a deadline. You have to publish a work. You have to show something. You don't have anybody out there that you have to, a work that you have to release. There is no consequence for not doing the stuff. And that's why the whole idea of inspiration comes into being. Because then if it was something you had to do consistently, like most of the novels, like Charles Dickens, then when he would write his novel, he would write like a chapter and then send it to a magazine or a newspaper and get it published, and that way you get paid. And over time, there was already an arrangement or an agreement. He had to write so and so chapters and send it for the magazine to get published that period. And so it wasn't a matter of inspiration. He had to write. He had to sit down to create and write something beautiful and send it out there. And over time, he would finish a work. So it's the whole idea that probably because oftentimes writing is not what we do full time. It's not like something we do full time where it's our job, we're responsible and everything. That's why probably we're waiting for inspiration and we're looking for inspiration. We're like, okay, I don't really have inspiration. You see, Anthony Trollope would write every 15 minutes every day and he would write a lot of stories and all those things. But now I'm asking myself that, is it because, how do I put myself in a situation where inspiration is not really a thing anymore? Because sometimes when we say inspiration is because we do not feel like writing. And why do we not feel like writing? Oftentimes there are different reasons, but one of the reasons why we don't feel like writing is because we are afraid of how it will turn out. We're afraid that we're not good enough. We're afraid that we don't have the skills. We're afraid that we cannot just write a great work. We're afraid of what the result will be. And so guess what happens? We've shifted our focus from the craft itself to the result. And so when we shift our focus from the craft itself, from the practice itself, from the process itself, now our focus is on the result. So what happens? What essentially happens is that because we're so focused on the result, we don't write. Because one of the ways that we can avoid ever writing a terrible work is by not writing at all. But what happens is that when you do not write at all, you fail completely because you do not have anything to show. You did not. It's not a man who went to a boxing ring and got beat up and he lost. That man is a greater winner than any other person that was watching or spectating the game. Because when you're in the ring, I do not mean you're in the studio. When you're in the ring, it's a different game entirely. When you're receiving punches, it's a different game entirely. The beauty about creative work is that we trust the process that it will work, even though it might not work. Yet we trust the process and we give our all to it. We find delight in the process, in the work itself. That's the beauty of being a writer. That's the beauty of being a creative. So the question is, how do we set ourselves so disciplined? And I like what Seth Godin in his book, The Practice, he talks about how we need to make the practice the goal. Like the practice of showing up to writing consistently, we need to make that the goal itself. Like, oh, so and so time I sit down and I write. That is the goal. For most of the work that we write, most of them will not get accepted. Most of them will get rejected. Most of them will not get published. But we do all those stuff in order that we will be able to write the work that will eventually get published, the work that will eventually get good. In order that we'll be able to show up to write the process. That's the whole idea. Now let's break down why they believe that you need to wait for inspiration is misleading. First, inspiration is unreliable and often fleeting. And oftentimes when we talk about inspiration, we talk about, oh, I do not feel like writing, or I'm afraid that the work would turn out well. I do not have this confidence boost. And the funny thing about confidence is that you get confidence from writing, from doing the thing. The best way to get confidence is from doing the thing. Think of it this way. If you are like tall, like let's say 7 feet. I'm just say like freaking tall, you don't really have an issue that I don't have the confidence because I'm not tall. Like, that's not a statement that you make. If you had like 10 kids of yours, you're not gonna say, oh, I'm not confident because I'm barren. It it doesn't really make sense. If you've gone to university, so you've gone to school and you had your PhD, you're like, I'm not really, I really go to school, I'm not literate, I'm not that stuff. So the best way to get confidence is by doing the thing. So you do the thing, you write and write over time, and then over time you realize that, oh, I've been writing so far. The last 10 times I wrote, I didn't die. This time I'm going to write, I'm not going to die. So no matter how terrible I feel like the work would be, I still can pull through, I still can write. It is by doing, and I know that it doesn't make sense. Like logically, it doesn't make sense. Like we need the confidence to do the thing, but it's in doing the thing that we'll get the confidence that we need to do the thing. And so if you don't do the thing, you will never get the confidence. And because you never get the confidence, you will never do the thing. We need to start. And we need to trust the process. That what we're doing would amount to something. That what we're doing, it might not work. That's the reason why it's a creative stuff. If not, we'll better probably be working in a factory because the factory, everything gets to work. Like, it's straightforward. But with a creative thing, it's a work of faith. Every time you sit down, you believe. And this is not just I believe, or I feel like I believe. No. It is beyond how I feel, do. And it takes belief, it takes faith in something, in a process, for you to spend your time in doing that thing. So it's not just, oh, my mind is this, or you don't feel like doing it, but it's in doing the stuff that we gain the confidence from writing. Professional writers can't afford to wait for inspiration to strike. Like, they have deadlines to meet, they have other things to work on. That's what they do, the writers and all that. So they find inspiration. And oftentimes I've noticed that when you sit down to write and work on something, there's a certain kind of inspiration that comes that you would never have gotten if you've never started the work. And I think there's this quote out there, I can't remember who the quote is from, where it's like writing a book is like a car walking, going on a journey with just its headlight. The car can't see the whole road, but the car can like see a couple of meters ahead of where it's going. And that's enough to get the car from the destination, just like that. So regular writing actually increases the likelihood of feeling inspired. It's by doing the work, that's when you gain the confidence of doing it. Like, think of the first time you tried to do some of the things you wanted to do. Like, I remember the first time I tried to ride a bicycle. Like, dude, I was scared, man. Over time, I started writing the bicycle, and you get to a point where it's no longer as scary as it seems. You get, yeah. So what is the practical advice I have for myself and for you too? So how can you write consistently without relying on inspiration? Here are some strategies. First, we need to establish a writing schedule and a regular writing schedule. Now, there is this schedule from Ralph no, not Ralph, Ray Bradbury, where he talked about writing a short story every week. And if you write, you can't just write 52 short stories in a row. And I'm going to work on and practice. I'm going to try doing that. That's what I'm going to do. The writing, a consistent regular writing schedule, it doesn't have to be every day. It could be every weekdays. It could be 3 times a week, but consistently enough that you're able to see progress and you know that this is the time for writing, and you just stick to it and see what it amounts. So the process itself becomes what the delight. Sitting down to write for 1 hour, for 30 minutes, for 15 minutes, that it's the goal, that it's the reward itself. Not that the work would amount to great. Of course, if it's amounts to something, it's wonderful, but we have to make the craft itself, the process itself, our goal, our delight, our reward, and such that when we do the task, which nothing can stop us from, we get our reward. Your work could be rejected. See, there are a lot of writers, their work was only published or got into acclaim after they were dead. And I'm trying to say, what if doing when they were alive, they did not write because their work couldn't amount to anything. Such kind of writers, what would have happened to them? Some writers, like, most of their works were published when they were dead. Like, seriously, that's awesome. That's not that the fact that what I mean is that the fact that they wrote even without their work being published and all that is what is really, really surprising me. And I'm like, the work itself, the craft of, oh, I sit down to write, that itself is rewarding, that itself inspiring, that itself it's fantastic, that itself it's good. And it's what we're probably say inspiring, yeah. And one of the things we want to do is we want to create a pre-writing ritual to signal to our brain that it's time to write. And it could be that you set up a time that such and such time for 20 minutes, you disable all notification, you disable everything, and you kind of like cut off from the world, and you just focus on writing. There's certain writers that when with time to write, they'll disconnect their internet from their computer physically, such that they cannot connect to the world and they cannot see any news, any new update or anything. They only have to sit down to write. And Neil Bradbury would say this, that one of the things that he'll do is that when it's time to write, he can only sit down, stare at the blank screen. He cannot do anything else. It's either he writes or he stares at the blank screen. And sooner or later, when you stare at the blank screen, might be saying that it's a blank screen, but it's intimidating. That you just say, what do I have to lose? Let me just write. That itself, it forces you to in a state of mind where you're like, okay, I can only sit down and do this or not. And oftentimes, sometimes in the days where we're like, I said I'm going to write for 30 minutes and you have only 5 minutes, let's stop playing the zero sum game. Write without 5 minutes, whatever it amounts to. Yeah, the next day you go again, rather than say, okay, I've just missed today, tomorrow I'll go for 1 hour or 30 minutes. No, it's just different. It's just different. And we could use writing prompts or exercises to get started when feeling stuck. There are a lot of writing prompts out there, and there are lots on buildwriting.com. You could check them out there, and you could just use them to get started, to practice, exercise and all that. A lot of stuff out there. So ideas not really a problem. And you could also keep your own journal of ideas. That way, when you need them, you actually see ideas that are yours, that are, familiar. And you don't have to familiarize yourself with the idea. Okay. And one other way certain persons do it is that they set small, achievable daily word count goals. Yeah. So some say, oh, like Stephen King would say, oh, when I'm working on the project, I write 2,000 words a day. It's small, it's achievable. Next time we usually would write 500 words a day. It's small, it's achievable, and that way you're able to measure your progress rather than, oh, I just write, I don't really know. That way you don't really know how your work would how you're progressing. Like, as much as quantity doesn't really measure the numerics of quality, you also need a form of quantity in order to be able to measure your quality of writing, kind of that way. So there's this quote from Jodi Picoult that says, you might not write well every day, but you can always edit a bad page. You can't edit a blank page. And I like the whole idea, because showing up because oftentimes the reason why we don't write is because we're afraid that our work will not amount to anything. We're afraid that we'll not write something that is a masterpiece. That's why we don't write. And oftentimes you can always edit. Like, you might not be good at punctuation, you might not be good at grammar, but you can always edit that. But you cannot edit a blank page. The whole idea is that we can, funny enough, is that writing is one of the craft that you can edit that way. Like, if you're a sculptor, for example, and you sculpt, I don't think, could you probably edit that stuff as much as you could edit writing? Nah, not really. And you spend a lot of money depending on the kind of sculpture you're doing. Well, writing, you spend time, which you also spend in sculpture. So I feel like we have the liberty to practice as much as we want to with the least cost. Yeah, compared to other forms of writing, that for each painting and everything, you'd still have to spend a lot of money in order to practice. But what these ones, paper is one of the cheapest commodities in society. Yeah, so you can always edit a bad page, but you cannot edit a blank page. You can always edit a bad page, but you cannot edit a blank page. Okay, so what's the writing challenge for today? You need to just write for 30 minutes straight without stopping, or 15 minutes, or 10 minutes, depending on your level. Just write. It's a sprint. Don't stop, don't edit, don't overthink. Just write whatever comes to mind. You could, just write that. Now, over time, we've noticed that the professionals do not wait for inspiration. They do the work. The work itself is the reward. Writing itself is the reward. That itself is the reward. And the difference between professionals and amateurs is that we have the liberty as amateurs to hide. We have the liberty to not show up. We have the liberty to not take the work seriously. But a professional does not, because if he doesn't, a lot is at stake for him. But the question is that how can you even be a writer if you do not write? That itself Yeah, how can you? The reason why we talk so much about inspiration is because we are afraid of what it will turn up. And so we believe that inspiration, with a very good inspiration, our work would amount to something great. But even then, we have to show up. We build the confidence from showing up. If you found this episode motivating, please leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening. And it helps other writers discover these myth busting tips and discover these podcast. Yeah. And join us tomorrow. In on tomorrow episode, we'll be looking at whether your first draft really needs to be perfect. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. I'll see you on the next episode. My name is Oyemichino Akonama. You've been listening to the Build Writing Podcast. Until next time, keep writing.